Evening.
No. He's out a couple times a week morning.
That was more of a just because it wasn't something.
Too nice to be sitting in here. I probably did.
Oh, there's me. Test.
We got to turn those down.
Testing 1, 2.
There we go. Our meeting's tomorrow at 1? Okay.
Yeah, I saw the agenda for next week. I think, did we have one sooner? And then all of a sudden, then another email, there was
Yeah.
agenda for tomorrow. It's like, oh yeah.
Here it is here. No. Tomorrow's agenda.
Next week.
Well,
Oh, I'm sure we will. Everybody from Big Ben will be there.
We just play innocent. We're just trying to help.
Anybody can ask.
Yeah.
yeah.
They have the right to ask.
That's right. Free country.
Well,
document doesn't have enough acronyms in it.
I'd love to have those nice map, but you can see all the vents in the head there. Maybe every time you get thousands as it did.
I'm going to call the Village Board and Plan Commission to order. Today is Wednesday, September 13th at 6 o'clock. We're at the Village Hall. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Brad, would you read the roll call for the Village Board and Plan Commission?
President Shu,
I'm here.
trustee Swanee, excused absence, trustee Finch,
Here.
trustee Millies,
Here.
trustee Newman,
Here.
Commissioner Noack,
Present.
Commissioner Rinaldi,
Here.
Commissioner Alex.
Here.
This meeting was noticed and posted according to law.
And we have a quorum both of the Village Board and Plan Commission. I'm going to open our first public hearing. I just wanted everybody to know that we have 3 public hearings tonight. So when I open the public hearing and ask for comments, we're going to take in as many comments as everyone has. But once we close a public hearing, we can't take any more comments. So I just wanted everybody to know what the deal is. But I'll remind you again. Notice is hereby given that a joint public hearing by the Village of Vernon Board and Plan Commission will be held on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at the Village of Vernon Hall located W249 South 8910 Center Drive to consider an amendment to the Village of Vernon Smart Growth Comprehensive Plan. The proposed amendment will change the future land use map, a component of the Village of Vernon Smart Growth Comprehensive Plan, for multiple parcels near the Highway 164 and Cartwright Court as delineated on the public hearing notice. And I should just note for the record that on the public hearing notice, all the tax key numbers that are involved in the comprehensive land use amendment are delineated on the public notice. And I just wanted the public to know that the Plan Commission and Village Board have discussed this pretty extensively. So if you don't see a lot of discussion from the Plan Commission and Board, it's not that they haven't studied, but they've done a lot of homework. Sean, you want to give an overview, please?
Sure, yeah, and just to follow up on that, the Plan Commission has made a recommendation via resolution to adopt or to recommend approval to the Village Board for adoption by ordinance of these changes to the comprehensive plan, future land use map. So just a very quick refresher, back in February of this year, Mr. Lang, who owns, Brad, would you mind flipping over? Who owns the lot just on the north side of Cartwright Court, just east of 164, approached the village to divide the property, and it turns out we couldn't divide the property because it wasn't, the comprehensive plan basically plans this entire area that you see in yellow as rural residential, which requires at least 5 acres per new dwelling unit that gets created, and his property wasn't big enough to divide. So essentially what the Plan Commission and Board decided to do was to take a broader look at the area in general to see if it was a good fit for potentially changing the land use plan in this area to allow that to happen. And back in 2019, closer to the village of Big Bend, we did change some land uses surrounding that from rural residential to suburban density residential, which allows development at a rate of 1.5 to 4.9 acres per dwelling unit. So it's the next dense category up. So I took a look at some of the area around 164 and Cartwright Court to see if it would be some of the properties might be good candidates to change. And I looked at a number of factors. I went and looked back at all the certified survey maps and land divisions that have occurred over the years, and this is outlined in my staff report. I was specifically looking for restrictions that were put in place that would prohibit future divisions. I looked at some of the environmental features in the area. There's a bunch of isolated natural resource area and some wetlands. And of course, when you get west of 164, there's the river, and then it's wetland as well. So again, this is the future. And so in my evaluation of some of the properties here, and we really only went as far as the properties on the south side of Cartwright Court and then on the west side of 164. So essentially I think due to certain environmental constraints that are on a number of these properties and the configuration of a few of these properties, doesn't make sense to further divide them. And so they're larger than 5 acres now. We could change the land use for them, but there's no real possibility of division of those given the current configurations and environmental corridors. And so the properties that are potentially dividable in the future or are already smaller than 5 acres so that they would fit that category are what are sort of highlighted with the orange boundaries here. So it's these properties here, including Mr. Lang's property. The one property that would be potentially divisible is at the end of Cartwright Court. However, there's a conditional use on it that essentially prohibits that from happening. So while that conditional use exists, we wouldn't be looking to divide that. So that property would be left out of it. The other property we looked at is to the west of 164. The county owns 3 properties over there, and it's mostly in green here. You can see is environmentally sensitive areas, but the rest of the areas are county owned. They're already zoned P1, so they're already zoned for that type of a use. And so our land use plan currently still has them as rural residential, and so we should look to change those to recreational. So my recommendations were these few properties that are already small enough to be considered as part of the category, are those with actual potential for division, should be included in this land use plan update. And then obviously the county property as well. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer, but that's it in a nutshell. So we'd be changing the future land use map to include those new suburban density residential parcels and then the county's parcels to recreational.
Sean, there's one county parcel that's in, going from the RRD5 to the 1.5 to the 4.9 density. Is that correct?
Which one are you referring to?
It's VNT 2116-997-001. I can see the other 2 properties, the county properties that are going into the recreational category.
And you're saying there's one that it wasn't on here?
No, it's the last one on the public hearing notice, 2116-997-001.
And you're saying it's not on the map?
Well,
I'm not following what you're saying.
it's on the public hearing notice.
Okay.
It's listed as in RRD, our current category is RRD5, but it's listed that it's going to the suburban density.
And it's a county-owned parcel.
That's what it says on the public hearing notice.
Let me double check, because that could be correct. Let me look at the zoning on here.
I'm sure the county won't have a problem, but
No, the county wouldn't have a problem, but let me just check the zoning to see. So the county zone parcels are P1. But the zoning shouldn't matter. It's the future land use category is what we're talking about.
Well, that's what it says.
So yes, the future land use is all rural residential right now. I only mentioned the zoning under those as P1. So yes, they're all currently planned for residential. We'd be planning them for recreational.
But in this land use, it's going from,
You're saying it's going to suburban density residential. That would be incorrect.
that's why I questioned it, because that's unusual if the county has, I was just going to, did you pull it up on the GIS system, Sean?
Well, I'm looking on the overhead. If you look up here, these are the 3 county properties, right?
Okay, yep.
So but that's in the land use plan. That's just the zoning. So let's look at the land use plan. And so the land use plan for those 3 properties, the green is all environmentally sensitive
Right.
areas. And so the yellow underneath is rural residential, and the blue it's going to is recreational. None of the county property should be going to suburban density.
So
residential.
this is just,
So that may be incorrect. The map is correct.
okay. I just wanted to clarify because it's unusual for a county property.
Right, they'll all be going to recreation.
Okay, sounds good. Now I'll be quiet.
No, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So are there any questions on this? We have talked about this for a couple of meetings. And so this is really just to wrap up. And obviously the public hearing, if the public has any comment on this, would be.
Is there anyone that would like to comment on the comprehensive land use amendments? I'll ask one more time, any public comments? I'll just note for the record that there are no public comments. Plan Commission or board members, do you have any questions? I know you've seen this many, many times, indication that there's no comments from the board members.
The only other point I'd make for the record is that we do have a public participation plan. That's part of our comprehensive plan that we have to follow every time we do an amendment. In its most basic sense, it requires a public hearing
Right.
and then posting, as part of the agenda packets. And so that's what we've done for this point. This time around, if there's something more complex, let's say the village initiates a bigger, like we did in 2019, we looked at a lot more properties. Then we had a workshop and other things. As part of
Right.
it. But we've met the letter of the law in terms of the plan, what's required at a basic level.
Thank you, Sean. So are there any final questions from the Plan Commission or board members? No comments from the public? I'm going to close the public hearing, and I'm going to open up for discussion and possible action on the future land use plan amendments to this Village of Vernon Smart Growth Plan. Is there a recommendation from the Plan Commission to the village board? Oh, they already did that in the ordinance.
Yep, that's already done. And again, this is by ordinance, so they would be adopting by ordinance.
So do you want the Plan Commission? Because they've already done that.
They've
So-
made their resolution already.
So it would just be proper for the village board to concur with the ordinance of the Plan Commission to recommend the changes to recommend the amendments to the comprehensive land use plan?
To adopt the amendments via ordinance, which will come later to wrap it up.
Okay. Is there a motion to that effect? Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Dylan Newman and trustee Millies made a second. Discussion on the motion? Discussion, hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That was unanimous. Let's see. So we're good on that, Sean? You got what you need? Okay. The next, we have a public hearing by the Village of Vernon Board and Plan Commission to be held today, September 13th, 2023, at 6 p.m. at the Village of Vernon Hall, located at W249 South 8910 Center Drive, to take comments on floodplain ordinance amendments to Chapter 305, floodplain zoning and map revisions that are required by state and federal law. These revisions govern the development in the mapped floodplain areas. Once again, I just wanted to tell the public that the Plan Commission and Board have talked about these, so if you don't see a lot of comments from them, it's because they've done their homework. Sean?
Yeah, this is very simple, and we have talked about this before. We adopted our floodplain ordinance in 2020 after becoming a village. At the time, the county, or the FEMA was working on updated flood insurance study and updated flood insurance rate maps. Those are in effect at this point, or will be in effect as of October 19th, and so they require every municipality that's part of that study, and that study was part of the Fox River essentially, to update their ordinances to incorporate the new maps. It's required by law, so we have until next month to do so. We're taking care of it tonight. So in the packets, it's really just scratching out some old map numbers and replacing them with some new map numbers, and that's about the gist of it.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Are there any comments from the public, questions or comments from the public in regards to the floodplain amendments, floodplain zoning and map revisions to our current Chapter 305? Any comments from the public? I called twice. There are no comments from the public. Are there any Plan Commission or Village Board comments or questions in regards to the revisions to Chapter 305 of the floodplain ordinance and map revisions? Any comments or questions? There are no comments or questions. I'm going to close this public hearing, and then we're going to jump right into discussion on the floodplain amendments to Chapter 305. Sean, does the Plan Commission need to make a recommendation to the village
Yes.
board on the amendments?
Correct.
And right now, I would entertain a motion from one of the members of the Plan Commission to recommend to the village board to approve the amendments to Chapter 305, the floodplain zoning and map revisions that are required by state and federal law. Is there a motion to that effect?
I will make that motion.
Commissioner Nowak, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Rinaldi, discussion on the motion from the Plan Commission. Any discussion, Plan Commission members? There is none. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. I said aye, I'm sorry. Now I would entertain a motion from the village board to concur with the Village Plan Commission on their recommendation to approve the amendments to Chapter 305 of the floodplain zoning ordinance and map revisions as required by state and federal law. Is there a motion to that effect from the village board?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Trustee Jeff Millies made the motion, and Trustee Dylan Newman seconded the motion. Is any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And Sean, what's the next step? Isn't there another notice that Brad has to do?
There might be notices for the DNR who passes it on to FEMA and coordinates,
Okay.
but nothing that the Plan Commission board has
Okay.
to do at this point.
It's all administrative?
Yeah, we have to pass on the final ordinance and so on.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Okay, the next public hearing we have is, the notice is hereby given that the public hearing will be held at the Village of Vernon Plan Commission on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 6 p.m. at the Vernon Village Hall at West 249 South 8910 Center Drive to consider the request of the property owner owned by Barbara Hockenberry for the property located at South 81 West 26205 National Avenue, McGuanago Mailing 53149, identified by the tax key number of VNT 2081982, to request a waiver from Section 300-14 paren A paren 7 of the Village of Vernon Code, specifically for accessory buildings location. That is the public notice. Sean Malarkey, would you please give an overview to the Public and Plan Commission?
I would, thanks. So this is the property here on National Avenue, just pretty much across from the fire station. Fairly simple request here. There's an existing house, there's a garage, and there's a small shed on the property. They want to essentially add a new accessory building on the property. It's going to be 30 by 40 feet, 1,200 square feet, which is fine in terms of the size, but it's going to be located in the front yard. So it's closer to National Avenue than the house is, which is not allowed by the ordinance unless a waiver is basically granted. In this case, you can see where the accessory building would be located is essentially, in the house and everything else is enshrouded by trees. I mean, you can't see it from anywhere, including surrounding properties. So visually, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but the Plan Commission still needs to consider the factors that go into granting a waiver. One thing I'll mention is that properties are limited to 2 accessory buildings, residential properties. So this small shed, if it still exists on the property, does need to be removed as part of this approval prior to the construction of the new 30 by 40 building. Let me see if I have anything else here. This will require a deed restriction. Anything over 900 square feet does require a restriction to be placed on the property saying it can't be used for commercial or industrial purposes. So the factors that are in the staff report for consideration would be on the bottom of page 2 for the request for waiver. Essentially, the Plan Commission, this is Plan Commission only, makes a determination which shall include consideration, but not necessarily an affirmative finding of the following factors. And maybe President Shu, when we get to that point, maybe you could lead
Go
him
through it,
lead him
yes.
through those. So that's all I have.
Okay. Barbara Hockenberry, are you here? Would you like to come forward, please? Barbara, you heard Sean Malarkey, our zoning and planning administrator, give an overview. Have a seat, dear. Sit down and relax. He just gave an overview of what you're requesting in the property, and just so you know, the Plan Commission. Have you seen the planner comments? Were they emailed to you, Sean's come, did you email him? Oh, okay. Okay. Is there anything you wanted to add based upon what our administrator, our zoning and planning administrator just reported to the Plan Commission? Did he say it?
You are aware, is that small accessory building still on the property, that little shed? Okay, so that, okay.
So if they want it taken down, I can take it down. It's just a little chicken coop, it's maybe 8 by 10.
Okay, you're limited to 2 buildings unless a waiver is granted for an additional building, but that's not part of the request, so that will have to come down unless you come back and ask for a waiver.
And Barbara, if the Plan Commission does approve, it is part of the conditions of approval that that little building come down? But anything else you'd like to add? Okay, then you can have a seat. Thank you. Are there anybody from the public here that would like to make comments on the request? Anyone else from the public? A note for the record that there are no public comments in regards to the request. Are any questions or comments from the Plan Commission before we close the public hearing? Obviously, they can still ask questions when they're in deliberation, but any questions or comments from the Plan Commission?
If she would take that chicken coop and attach it to the back of their garage, would that be considered one building then?
It would be if it was structurally attached, yeah. So per the building inspector would have to verify it's structurally part of that building, and then
Screw it.
whatever he would determine to be structurally part of the building.
Dan?
Isn't the existing garage already in front of the house?
It is,
Back
I don't
or-
know when that was granted or not, and
Yeah.
if there was a waiver as part of that, but that is where it is, yes.
Considering the size of the parcel and all the landscaping around it, I don't see any problem with it.
I agree.
That's
Because-
exactly why we have these waivers, for situations where it's just not.
Because of those items, I would be approve it, but.
Mario or Michael, Mike, any comments or questions before we close the public hearing?
Nothing different for me.
Okay.
Same impression.
Okay, well, if there are no more comments, I'm going to close the public hearing. And now we're jumping into the Hockenberry accessory structure to allow them their location closer to the base setback line of the residence. Plan Commission, I just wanted to go through I think I know the answers to these, but I just wanted to go through, our normal waiver procedures, and just would like to make sure that we all understand, the modifications here that we're doing. My question to the Plan Commission is, do you feel this waiver or modification, if granted, would be consistent with the general intent of the ordinance? A note for the record that it was a unanimous yes. Whether this request or modification, if granted, would adversely affect property owners on the surrounding property, I would say no. I can see all the Plan Commission indicated no. C, whether this request or modification, if granted, would benefit the petitioner's project in a way that is not consistent with the village interest, I'd say no. And whether the petitioner is in full compliance with all applicable ordinances and agreements with the village. Our administrator, planning and zoning administrator said they are in compliance, except for the shed thing, but that's something we'd put in the conditions. Do you concur with that? They're in compliance? And do you feel that instead of granting this request for the waiver or modification, should the ordinance itself be changed to accommodate this kind of situation presented by the petitioner? And we'd say no, because we don't want to generalize this. We want to look this at specific reasons why, and this is clearly why we're doing that. Does the Plan Commission agree? Note for the record that the Plan Commission unanimously agreed. So Sean, in their motion, all 5 of them are in there. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I ask for a motion from the commission?
No?
So at this point on the agenda, I would be asking for the Plan Commission to either deny, and you'd have to give reasons why, or approve the accessory building waiver request for Barbara Hockenberry for the property located at South 81 West 26205 National Avenue, subject to the following conditions. 1, we all went through, and then the other 9 that are, or really 10 that are kind of standard and, standard to this request, and 11, which is the standard pay all fees.
Could I interrupt one?
Yes, yes,
Condition 6 has to do with the removal of the
Shed.
the 100 square foot shed approximately. And it essentially says it's got to be removed from the property prior to issuance of a building permit for the proposed new building. I wonder if we could, if you
Modify that?
modify that to say remove from the property or structurally attached to another building. That would satisfy.
Attach. Does it,
It
to
doesn't
another,
affect the square footage capacity.
No, they have a huge property.
building. So I would entertain a motion to approve with that modification to condition number 6 to add or structurally attach to another building. Is there a motion to that effect? To approve from the Plan Commission?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Discussion. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Barbara, here's your homework.
So I'll issue the zoning permit as soon as I can, and then you can apply for the building permit through Vince.
There you go. Thanks. Have a good night. You're welcome to stay. This is really fun. Right, guys? Oh, no, thank you for coming in. Yay. Is Mr. Callie here? Want to have a seat up here, sir? How do you pronounce that? Collie. I'm sorry. Like the collie. Mr. Colley, what I'm going to ask is Sean Malarkey to give a overall report of your application and request to the Plan Commission and Board. And so what I'll do now is turn it over to Sean Malarkey.
Thank you. What's being requested tonight is site plan of operation approval for a new office headquarters for Colley Builders, which is a design build general contracting firm. They're looking to locate on Walter Way, which is a fairly new development in the village. We've approved a site plan of operation for the big lot, which is a combination of the owner's hot air balloon business, office space, storage space, and then storage in the back. There's stormwater management as part of the property and the outlot to the back. So this is lot 3 here. That's where they'd be locating. The building is 4,560 square feet, which includes 2,560 square feet of office and about 2,000 square feet of storage space. Here are the building plans here. Proposed building and proposed parking area, the driveway coming out to the cul-de-sac on Walter Way. I don't have too many comments for this. The property is zone B3 general business, in which a contractor business would be allowed, design build business, office use, storage, it's all allowed under B3. So that's all good. Their plan of operation essentially is the operation of a design build company, providing design services and construction management for residential and commercial projects, 7 full-time employees. Company vehicles and equipment include company pickup trucks for use by employees. Those primarily go home with the employees at night. No vehicles or large equipment would be stored on site. They may leave a trailer lift to be kept on the site between jobs. The garage storage area will be used primarily for storage of tools, scaffolding, and client finish orders such as cabinetry, but nothing stored outdoors on the site. Hours of operation, Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. through 6 p.m. The application includes building architecture. We do have architectural standards in the village, which in my opinion, I think have been met. We do allow, these are essentially metal architectural panels that are installed with some accent materials and roofing near the entryway. But the Plan Commission and Board certainly can talk about the architecture in terms of what your thoughts are on that. One of the comments I do have about the property is with regard to the parking. And so they do meet parking counts that are required for the particular use, but our ordinance requires parking to be set back at least 20 feet from all property lines. That's something that can be waived as part of our site plan review process. So that's certainly something that can be discussed. I don't remember if I talked to Jose about this or not, but it looks like the building could essentially be moved 20 feet or 10 feet to the east to accommodate that 20-foot offset, so I'm not sure if that's something that can be done or not. But with that said, what this butts up against is essentially the storage business and stormwater area. So it's not really a concern in terms of a compatibility issue with residential. So if the Plan Commission was of a mind to grant the waiver, it wouldn't be something I would be opposed to. The landscape plan that's provided, I think, is good. There's only one, essentially you have to add one tree out closer to the right-of-way to meet the ordinance. Once that's done, it essentially would be met. The garbage and refuse containers are going to be stored indoors, so that's not a concern. I mentioned the exception. The village engineer had a couple of comments with regard to grading. The grading plan that was submitted, he essentially thought there was some concern about water coming down and from the north, washing down to the patio and the parking area and so on. Kali Builders is also working with the potential buyer of Lot 2 to the north, so that project is coming our way very soon. I won't get into the details, but essentially the final grading is being worked out between both properties at this point in time. And so one of the conditions that we have as part of this approval would be that the final grading plan would have to be approved by the village engineer prior to issuance of the building permit for the property. So we don't really see a problem with it. In general, the grading plan is fine, but there's just some minor concerns with grading between those areas. So I don't have much else to add beside that. I think it's a good fit for the property. I couldn't really imagine a better type of a business that would be, that would go here, given the surroundings. And I think the architecture looks good, in my opinion, as well. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Sean. Mr. Cully, is there anything that you'd like to add in regards to Sean Malarkey's overall report on the?
The summary is great.
Okay. Questions from the Plan Commission or board?
Sean, is it that bottom parking spot, the one that's close?
Mario, can you speak
yeah.
into your microphone so the people at home can hear you?
Yeah, it's essentially this bottom parking space that's closer than 20 feet. Right. So in the staff report, there, essentially for the waiver to be granted, this isn't, I think it may be the same language as waivers granted for. No, it's not. It's basically called an exception. So this is section 300-21.5. This is our site plan review section. It essentially says that the Plan Commission may grant an exception from the requirements for a unique or special situation where the applicant demonstrates to the satisfaction of the Plan Commission and board that the exception will not negatively impact the surrounding properties or the community based on the design and layout of the site and/or structures. It doesn't require a hardship. So if you can prove it's not a big deal, then you can grant the exception.
Mr. Kelly, are you intending to move the building or would you need the waiver?
I personally would like to leave it there, just for the fact that I'd rather keep it open in the back if there was ever an expansion to the building. So I'd rather have that 10 feet from back versus the front, because we wouldn't be adding to the front.
And
So, I mean, we don't have plans for that, but I would appreciate that variance there.
And Sean, if the Plan Commission is entertaining that, would you propose that as another condition of approval?
Of the exception?
Yeah.
Yeah, the exception, let me see what I got here.
I don't, and I see we're just going to change where it says Waukesha. We're just going to put Vernon.
Yeah, let's just put Vernon there. So condition 6 is the exception. So that's written in
Oh, I see.
the
Okay,
conditions
got
that the exception was granted.
Okay.
I've drafted it that way.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Questions from the Plan Commission or the board? We'll just open it right up. Dan?
I don't see any problem with granting that exception since we've got a storage building, basically to the west. I do have some questions on the landscaping plan. One of them is the deciduous trees along the north side there. What type of trees are those?
I don't know.
Do we have any idea? It doesn't specify, but
Yeah, and the landscape, just to be fair, the landscape ordinance doesn't require necessarily them to specify, but your point is valid. If they have an idea, then.
any type of a deciduous tree, it seems like they're awfully close together. Those are the ones I'm looking at right there, yeah.
Yeah, those are, I'm not sure how far apart they are.
Looks kind of crowded, but
So one thing I'll say about the
good on
landscape plan is they,
I know that.
they far exceed the requirements for
Yeah.
landscaping in the
Right,
ordinance. So if
right.
they were to lose a couple of those trees, it wouldn't necessarily, they would still be in line with the
We
landscape.
still need like a street tree or something, right?
We still need to meet the ordinance, we need one
One of
street
them
tree
could
within
be
30
moved
feet of the
there,
right
or-
of way. Right, exactly.
I wouldn't mind if you spread them out a little bit, actually.
I personally don't know why they added more than.
Yeah. Is it a requirement of our landscape ordinance to surround that parking area?
No, they're not required to surround it, although they did. We have to have so many points within a certain distance of the parking lot or within
Okay.
islands, and so they've met and exceeded the landscape ordinance to do that.
I remember the word surround in here someplace.
Right, but
and I
there's
don't
a
know if
certain number of
that's-
points.
I don't know if that's what they were trying to meet here, but I don't see any place to push the snow. And if they do, some of them bushes are gonna die.
Yeah, that's a good point about the snow.
Yeah, most likely, because I plow my own parking lot, I would probably remove the ones on the bottom there. and I would
Exactly.
push that
So let's talk about that real quick so we can make some changes potentially. So what the plan says for parking lot landscaping, or what the ordinance says, is that landscape has to be provided within and surrounding parking lots with 10 or more vehicle spaces to soften and interrupt large paved spaces. It says for every 10 vehicle spaces or fraction thereof, a minimum of 30 points are required within parking lot islands or within 15 feet of the perimeter. And it talks about what it can be. So that's all that's required. If we tell them essentially that they can modify this as long as the point values are
Okay.
met, that would be okay by me.
And that would be up to you to review that?
I would review it one more last time before we pull the trigger on it. So in the conditions, we could simply add a condition that the landscape plan can be modified, provided it meets the requirements of the ordinance and it's reviewed by me.
That's good. Do you agree with that, Dan?
Yep.
Adding that verbiage? Further questions or comments or from the Plan Commission or the board? There are no comments, or is the Plan Commission ready to make a recommendation to the village board to approve the site plan of operation for Kali Builders located on lot number 3, CSM 12210 Walter Way in the village of Vernon with the, just looking to see, 14 conditions that have been stated in the planner's recommendation with a modification to,
Include an additional condition regarding the landscaping.
yes,
as
to,
discussed.
yes, to include an additional condition regarding the landscaping. Is there a motion to that effect from the Plan Commission?
I will make that motion to approve to the board.
Make a recommendation, Commissioner Noack,
Yes.
as stated. Is there a second to Commissioner Noack's motion? I was looking at Mike.
I have a question first to somebody else. I just want to make sure that that also still includes the waiver for the parking.
Yeah,
as
number
the
6,
condition.
condition
Right.
6 is the waiver, correct?
Yep, I'll make that second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Alex. Is there discussion from the Plan Commission? Discussion, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Is there a duplicate motion from the village board to concur with the Plan Commission's recommendations as stated?
I'll do that.
Is there a second to that? That was trustee Finch. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Trustee Newman, seconded. Discussion from the village board? Hearing none? Oops.
The only concern I'd have is having the evergreens that close to the asphalt. If you do any salt, they're all gonna die.
Yeah, the shrubs, you mean, the evergreen shrubs, yeah. And that's well noted, and we'll discuss that as we revise the landscape plan.
Yeah, and I thought Mr. Kelly said he might remove those and push it that way. If you need any help with that, I can.
I know it's all part of our requirements, but
Right.
it would be worth us modifying that as needed so that they don't all die.
Yeah,
and
this
that-
might be better. Decorative grasses and so on might be the best.
Whatever works.
Approach around.
Yeah, and then Sean did indicate he's going to resubmit his landscaping plan, and Sean will approve that.
Make
I
sure
just
it
wanted
still
to
meets
throw
the-
that in there while we were all sitting here.
Yeah, thanks for that. That makes sense.
Well, I have a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I already seconded
You
it.
did second it, and it was Trustee Finch, you made the motion? Okay. Discussion from the board. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Mr. Kelly, you're on your way.
So as soon as you have the updated grading plan and landscape plan, send them my way.
Yeah, we'll have the one for the other lot, I think, within the week.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome, thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good night. Next agenda item is amending the Village of Vernon zoning specifically related to the R3 residential district regarding offsets, setbacks, area, lot size, open space, and development requirements. Sean, would you like to take this?
Yeah, so in the packet is essentially a brief memo and my suggested changes to the R3 zoning. If you remember, we talked about this in regard to Newman developments in terms of how to approach the smaller lots and the lot sizes and how we do it. And we talked originally about maybe it would be a PUD or maybe a new zoning district, but I recommended that we just modify our most dense small lot district, which is R3, to accommodate lots with sanitary sewer and, public utilities on it. So the developer has, I know you talked about this probably with the board already, and they gave the go-ahead for me to make the changes, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So that's what these are. The developer was interested before they submit any more applications going forward, and that there was a path to move forward. And so this is our attempt at altering our zoning ordinance to make these types of lots possible, really restricted just to this area for R3 zoning. So we'd be rezoning to R3, doing the plat, doing all those things to come. I did speak with them in crafting these. So they felt like these would meet their requirements for the homes and lots that they're trying to build here. The one caveat that I'll add that's a mistake in the ordinance that I included is with respect to side lot lines or side offsets. Essentially, the way I have it written now is that lots served by municipal water and sanitary sewer would have a 7.5 feet minimum side yard, provided the total of both side yards wouldn't be less than 20 feet. So that's not correct. It should just be 7.5 period. So on either side, 7.5 feet. And so when we bring this back for public hearing, if it gets that far, that's the way it'll be written, is just 7.5 feet on either side.
Sounds good. Questions for Sean? Questions or comments in regards to what Sean has drafted? And we all realize that, well, you're going to know that the village of, as much as the village of Vernon doesn't want sewer and water in its community all over, I can assure you the village of Mugwanago board does not want to supply sewer and water to any other part of Vernon, their current board. So just so you know, the current board in Vernon and the current board in Mugwanago both agree that sewer and water is for this property, and don't come and ask us again. Well, we didn't ask for it, the developer did.
Are these the same for McClanago for the rest of the subdivision?
It's the lot size?
Yeah, and setbacks and stuff that match them?
I don't know. They're pushing to do this through a PUD. Essentially, the lots are going to look very similar, whether the requirements are different. I mean, they're building the same houses and the same lots, through most of it. So,
And they didn't want to create another zoning category.
Right.
So the PUD, although the developer wasn't too
the
crazy about it.
developer didn't want to do it. We could do a PUD, but we'd have to amend our PUD language anyways because it requires a certain amount of open space to do. This is just the easiest way to do it.
And it's conditioned upon sewer and water.
Right.
And the only other place that, God, there's nowhere else that we could get, not that I'm advocating for that, but
Right. Yeah,
I
I think the sentiment was that this is a mutually beneficial arrangement to be able to develop this property,
right.
straighten out the crooked lot municipal boundary between
Right.
the municipalities, and kind of a win-win for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But this is it, one time and done.
So are there any comments or we'd have to go through the public hearing process to present it to the public, which we obviously would want to do.
Yeah, so next month we could bring it back for public hearing, and then it'll be in the books, and then they can move forward with their applications.
Goes against my better judgment, but it's kind of a unique property, and to see that along, I think it's well worth it. And
Right, and to clean up that lot lines, and
Right.
Vernon does gain land, it doesn't lose land, and we get more lots, and the village board did talk about, possibly giving it to Mugwanago and keeping the money, but they want it to stay in our community. And I think it'll be, I can tell you from the older people that I know you guys don't know old people, but they like the smaller type lots. I mean, and I know what it's like to cut a lot of grass on a big lot. I'm getting really good at it, but I just wanted, everybody knows, every plan commission member and board member knows that this type of development is something that we're not advocating for, nor can we, because the only municipality that could give us sewer and water, and if you go to their board meeting, you'll hear their board say the same thing to their administrator and their planners, that this is the only area they want extended.
Good.
Just so you feel real comfortable, because
I felt the same way about it.
Yeah,
And after thinking it over, it is a unique property.
right.
So it kind of suits going this direction with it. So,
but it's not something that we normally would entertain.
It would be hard to develop it under our current zoning in any manner. So.
That's correct. That is correct. So do you want a motion from the plan commission that with a recommendation to the village board? I'm sorry, Mike?
I've just got one comment or question or maybe just statement. And this is maybe a process or procedure type of thing. But this is a zoning change for everywhere, but it's kind of specifically being done for Hine. And I just want to, like I said last time, I'm very much for this, and I'm very much for these buffer zones. We're going to need to figure out how we can all play nice in the same sandbox and have development happen. So I'll preface it with that. But just in general, to have, we saw the plan. That's why I think some people on the board or commission are like, okay, I see what they're trying to get from this. I think it was last month we had Cedillo come, and they kind of had their own type of, thoughts on specific properties. But in that case, we weren't able to see those plans. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering procedurally, and this might be a legal question, why in certain circumstances we kind of take into account, hey, this is a unique property, this is a unique situation, they've got some unique ideas, but in others, we're maybe not. The other question I would have is, bearing the cost of it. Cartwright was similar. We had Mr. Lang come in at first, and the question we had was, well, do we make this one property owner bear the cost, or do we kind of share that across the board? Some people would look at this and say, well, why are we providing this to Hine, who's going to be this developer, to come and make money in it? I'm not saying that we shouldn't follow this, because again, this is that sensitive buffer area and zone, but I think it's something that we need to be conscientious of across the board with, how we use our resources and how we treat different, whether it be developers or just applicants. Because it seems like it's creating little inconsistencies in, my biggest thing is, for one, we're told, yeah, look at these plans, this is why we're proposing it. And the other one is, hey, you need to pretend like your plans aren't out there, but just make the pitch. And then everybody's left scratching their heads, and an applicant is out the money, and they're like, this might have been a good idea, but we couldn't even see it. So
Right.
That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Mike.
So I can answer the first question as to why we weren't able to see what Cedillo was proposing versus, being able to see what we know what Newman's proposing as part of this, is because essentially what they're proposing is going to require a conditional use grant, and the conditional use they're proposing isn't even on the books. So they have to change the ordinance to allow the conditional use in there, and then we have to grant the conditional use. So we couldn't talk about what they're proposing because it would be part of the ex parte communication, which, I'm sure you're familiar with, Mike. So
Yeah, I think
that's the reason.
A little bit of that whole is, until you become an applicant, there can't be ex parte communication. I mean, you can talk about things, hypothetically, like when we consider conditional uses, or we look at the comp plan, we say, well, how many properties would this affect? Where do we see this actually happening? So I understand the thought of that being an ex parte issue, and anytime the words conditional use get brought up, everybody seems to get scared. But I think that maybe it's just philosophically, or, I'm not an attorney, but to be able to say that we're not able to, discuss land development because there's a possibility of a conditional use on it, I don't agree with.
And just for clarity, that the recommendation not to discuss specifics came from the village attorney on that one. So that's why we kind of said, hey, don't, well, there'll be more coming on that one, obviously. So, you'll see more as it comes on. They actually propose the conditional use that they're looking at.
I appreciate it.
But the second part of the question, I think, is a broader question for the Plan Commission and Board in terms of how we treat different applicants differently in terms of whether the village champions the cause or we make the petitioner move it forward.
And I think part of that is answered when we do something like do a comp plan. I mean, that's us saying, hey, this is the way that we see development working. So I think part of it is us going through the comp plan and doing that. But again, just to be consistent across the board.
And we all know that what we're waiting for is some critical information that the county's working on that will save us a lot of money in regards to the, the background information that goes into a comp plan. But I think we all know, thank God we haven't had a lot of requests for modification to the comp plan, but we all know it's way overdue and we have it it's been on the books budget-wise, but we're just waiting for that critical information that if we can piggyback off the county's information and the census information, that will help.
Right. They spend a lot of time and effort developing, what they, issues and opportunities and all the background data, and we can use that or we can go ahead without it too. I mean, I'm happy to start the plan. We're not talking about the comp plan necessarily right now, but yeah.
So at this point, is there a recommendation from the Plan Commission to recommend to the village board to go to public hearing on the recommendations for the R3 residential development related to offset setbacks, area lot size, open space, and development requirements? Is there a motion to recommend that to the village board from the Plan Commission?
I will make that motion.
Commissioner Nowak, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Rinaldi. Discussion? And Mike, your points were well taken. Further discussion?
So to clarify, this is to set the public hearing.
Right, just the public hearing. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is that motion, anybody opposed? It's unanimous. And from the village board, does the village board concur with the Plan Commission's recommendation to go to public hearing on the R3 residential district with the offset setbacks?
I'll make that motion.
And direct staff to do the public notice. Is there a second to that motion? Second. So the motion was made by trustee Millies, second by trustee Finch. Discussion?
I'm gonna just abstain.
Okay.
Because it's relating to Newman.
Well, no, this.
Well, we're doing it for.
Yeah,
them.
but just so everybody,
to be safe.
just so everybody knows, once this development, it's open to anyone, but trying to get sewer and water from anyone else is, so, but someday, who knows, but we'll note for the record, Dylan, that you abstained from the vote. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye, 3-1 with one abstention. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Did we do that? We did that. Oh, I did that. Pfft. Well, I was just going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Plan Commission?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Village Board, is there a motion to adjourn? By trustee Finch, is there a second? Trustee Newman, second. Discussion, I'll abstain. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.